Hello, how are you? Welcome to the Wealth Transfer, where we discuss biblical principles, global economics, and protecting and preserving your family's wealth. We just left off a series talking about our trade deals that we're doing with the TPP and what the East is doing and how that's going to impact the future. Wait till you see where this goes now regarding the Middle East, Syria, Russia, and China. Stay tuned. I'm along with Dr. Charles Vance. Welcome.
Terry, there's some wild stuff going on right now in the world.
More than people know, Charles. If you watch our media, you would never think it's this bad.
The media is always, the large media has always been controlled by politics.
Yes.
All people have to do is do a little research on it. They can find that. So we're getting fed things from the media that the media wants, that they want us to know, or that the politicians that are in control pretty much want us to know. Or maybe I should say the people controlling the politics are wanting us to know. Maybe would that be more
I wouldn't
accurate?
even say the politicians. I'd say it's the underground, the secret underground that runs the politicians. And you could call them whatever you want. I think our intelligence agencies and our sub-intelligence agencies that are controlling the narrative.
A lot of the things that are going on in the world right now have been orchestrated. I mean, it's not just happenstance that this stuff is taking place. You and I were talking right before we came on about some of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, and it almost looks crazy. Biblically, you start looking at the bear, which is Russia, moving into that area, and it obviously, we've not seen it happen before in history, and now it's starting to happen and fulfill some Bible prophecy.
You know what's fascinating about this? This is the first time Russia has entered the Middle East since Afghanistan.
Wow.
It's a long time. And they're a lot more sophisticated right now, and they're showing off. But it's way deeper than this, way deeper than them showing off. This is absolutely huge, what's going on in the Middle East. It is something that is being treated as, okay. But when you see the details and you learn the actual political narrative and the real strategy of Russia, China, Iran as it relates to the Middle East and the petrodollar, which directly relates to your standard of living, our future, and our children's future. So this is not something to take lightly, and I think when you see the full strategy laid out, the biggest question you're going to have after the next month or so of this series is, why are we allowing it? Wait until you get my take on that, because I think you'll be quite surprised, although some of you won't be. Some of you will be expecting that answer, but some of you unfortunately haven't figured it out yet, and you're going to be really surprised that we in the United States would actually be doing this. So,
Terry, I know, and you're aware of this, that when you come to sit down in the studio, you're very well prepared. You've got a whole list of material that you want to share, and I don't want to throw things off, but it seems kind of bizarre that Russia just shows up in this thing in the Middle East, that it seemed like things that we had allowed to get out of control, and we didn't step back in to do anything about it.
well, they didn't just show up. We allowed it. And we're going to get into a little more of that in the next few weeks, but at the United Nations meeting here at the end of September, they met. President Obama and Putin met. The other world leaders met. And basically, we allowed Russia to take the narrative because we basically said we don't want anything to do with it.
Why would America say we don't want anything to do with it?
You know what? I'm not going to say anything until about the end of the series, because
Okay.
this is, when they find out that take, you're going to be amazed.
But we have always been allies with Israel.
I know.
And it feels
Okay.
to me like some of the news that I'm hearing, we're all but cutting ties with Israel.
Well, yes, but when you say allies with Israel, what's even bigger than that? How many people have, what they need to catch is, look at our allies in the Middle East. What happened to them? Egypt, Mubarak. Now, Gaddafi was not an ally, but he wasn't a problem. We took care of him. Reagan took care of him. He was, you know.
Reagan took care of him. I like the way you say that.
He did.
Go ahead, sure.
No? All these countries that were having this, what they call the uprising, the Arab Spring uprising, It was more orchestrated than you think, and we're going to get into that a little bit more deeper too. There's a little more, I want to put this kind of in a sequence because that wasn't just a random Arab uprising. And I think when you start to see why that was allowed and who was in charge of that uprising, they weren't just random people in the streets, mind you. This was orchestrated by what I would say is the mafia of Islam. But when you get that understanding, you realize we renegotiated, Charles, all of our allies. And we're going to get into some of that a little later on. So this is very important. It's deep information. It's very current, and it's something we must understand because what's happening right now with the Chinese, Russians, and Iranians taking over the Middle East is something none of us have seen almost at any time in our history, especially with China.
Now we're buddies with China, though, to some degree, aren't we? I mean, we feel like we're buddies. Everything we wear has China written on it. All the stuff we bring home and plug in has China, made in China. I mean, obviously have trade agreements with them.
Sure.
Is that a negative, that they're going in to fight a war that we really don't want to even fool with?
What's really interesting is I've learned in this world, especially being in the Army, there's multiple levels of reality. And I mean that now. You know, when we used to do this, the media or what we put out in the military is what's going on. This is what we want you to know. This is what we're doing. This is the real intention. And you will never know the real intention most of the time. I mean, they'll pitch it to you a certain way, but you're not meant to know the real intention. And that's just the way it is. That's propaganda. That's, you know, it goes on and on. It's all through history. It's been that way. But China, our friends, you know how they say keep your enemies close. You know, a lot of people who have cozied up in relationships all through history have found betrayal, or when one gets too old in kingdoms, what happens when the young rise? They want to overthrow the king, right? What happens when the king is so abusive and people are so tired of it? What do the young want to typically do? They want to take the king out, don't they? Yeah, they want to.
Sure,
I want the kingdom for myself.
Uprising, yeah.
Uprising. Take over. China, don't think for a second that others in the world want that same thing for us.
Maybe more democratic, maybe in our thinking, that they would want to make the country more democratic. And the people in the communist countries almost try to convince the general population that they're trying to do that more all of the time.
Yes, and that's merely for a Western presentation. They're doing that to appease the Western ideologues.
Sure.
To try, I believe, to appease the Western elites that they're playing along like good little boys and girls when they're really not. And I think we either know that that's the case or we're incredibly naive. But what we want to get into, Charles, a little bit here is we left the series recently with the trade agreements, and we were talking about, you know, what's going on with the Silk Road and our military assets over there in the Middle East. How convenient that as we left off that series, everything just happened to take place and begin what we've been talking about. Russia moving in and China moving in. We're going to get into the real details about that and show some graphs and maps, and I think you're going to be quite, let's just say, encouraged to your knowledge that things are not what you think they are, and you're going to feel better about properly preparing your family, your assets, your household, because the future is very challenging for we the people. And there's a lot more to this, and this leads right into why the immigration crisis is so bad in Europe and what's getting ready to come to America and why they're doing it. Wait till you see that. So this is going to be a fantastic series, but understand what's happening is a direct assault on our standard of living, and it's changing right before our eyes. Do not underestimate what just took place. So it's very important to get knowledge. It's very important to be educated. This is not the time to be complacent, not the time to have standard trust and agreements with systems of the world and the fake and the fiat systems of currency. be properly protected and educated, and here's a good place to get started.
Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked hard to gain. For those who have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, we would like to send you a package of information regarding the changes to the dollar and the challenges of our economy that you need to be prepared for. This package includes how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA for long-term protection of your hard-earned wealth. For those of you with cash to invest, we can arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or simply send it to your home. Call or register now.
Now, before we get too heavy, I do want to address the Shemitah that just recently took place. Not only had we talked about it because we were studying collapses, stock market and financial collapses and trends before and after, and then we found they did fall in line with this Shemitah cycle that has been put out there for so long. And there was a lot of stuff on the internet about the Shemitah, so there was a lot of hype on it. And I think what's really misunderstood is a lot of folks were expecting in the Shemitah of September 13th some type of fireworks, some type of 9/11 building collapse or nuclear bomb or something. I'm not really sure, but it must be because there seemed to have been a lot of hype and buildup in a way that people were expecting something heavily visual.
There's a lot of people were even talking about the return of Jesus Christ.
Well, okay,
I mean,
but that's
all kinds of things. You
and
know?
then, Charles, and that's what was going on. So it got carried away in the explanation of it. What we were trying to refer in the Shemitah is the cycle of financial collapses and growth.
And a lot of it, when these Shemitahs would hit, which is how many years?
7.
Every 7 years, there would be a trigger point.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily something that was just, like you said, like a big explosion or an implosion
right.
of something, but it was the trigger of something big getting started.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw when we talked about that
Yes.
a lot on the programs. So if people were expecting something outrageous to take place, and people that we had even talked to and listened to had enough intelligence to know that they weren't telling people, look, something huge is going to happen, but there's going to be, it's a trigger point, it's a push button point, it's a beginning of something.
That's right. Yeah.
So the cycle has begun. Now, there's some stuff some crazy stuff that's been taking place.
The cycle has definitely begun because if you just study on our Shemitah cycle, if you notice 9/11, which was the 2000, and then 2007, 2008, it started with an initial kind of collapse, and then it kind of came back up, and then over a 6 to 9 month period, the markets continued to slide down.
The market's been crazy the last few weeks.
Well, here's what happened in the Shemitah cycle. This is what happened in September. We have had a 40% loss in markets in China. The whole Chinese market collapsed. 40%, mind you. And then the government came in and started doing stuff to kind of prop it up. They were even throwing people in jail who were selling stock in China. That's what communists can do. And then in the same time frame, our stock market rolled over and went down about 15% until our banking trade desks and what we call plunge protection team stepped in to rebound. And I remember, most folks probably didn't catch this day, we dropped 1,000 points in one day. And it rebounded almost all the way back up. That was from the plunge protection team. No one really knows what that is, but it really is basically the Federal Reserve trade desks, along with top-tier banking trade desks, came in and supported those markets down there with pretty much fake money. And I mean fake money, printed money, digits money, stuff that's not real. Remember, all these banks are insolvent. Insolvent. They have far more lent out than they actually have in assets. So they're insolvent. But they came in and rebounded this. So what I found very interesting, they are far more prepared this time than in 08 to manipulate the market picture and image, but it's not happening. You got a massive company called Glencore, a commodities company. Mind you, Charles, 6th largest company in the world. They have $100 billion in derivative commodity exposure to the financial markets. They're on the verge of collapse.
Explain that to the general public.
What do you mean?
That derivatives, 100 billion.
Meaning they're the sixth largest company in the world, and you never heard of them, no one has, and they are traders of paper investments dealing with commodities.
You're saying papers like bonds and stocks?
Yeah, like paper investments,
okay.
Meaning they're buying and selling futures contracts, options contracts.
And all of those are expectation contracts.
Expectations with a consequence if they don't go right. Okay?
Or a tremendous reward if they bet right.
That's correct, and that's why they're so big. Now, they've lost 80% of their market share already.
Wow.
That's huge. No, this is huge. And the media just kind of glossed over it. But I'm telling you, these are underlying major things happening.
Even if the media would mention those guys, I've not heard of their name before.
No, I know.
And I'm a little more in the know than the general public is. So, you know, even if the media mentions those people's names, they're not going to know who they're talking about.
Let me put it this way. If Glencore goes down, it would be considered the next Lehman Brothers. Now, that's what started the 08 collapse. So what happens is one goes down and it causes the domino through the system.
And it's doing that because of the fake paper that has to go somewhere.
Well, that and oil prices collapsed. It's doing it because oil prices have collapsed. The economies around the world are literally stalled. I would say just about every economy in the world is in the verge of a major recession close to depression. But you're not being told that, but that's the truth.
My guess, the reason that's happening, you correct me if I'm wrong, is because all of the banks, the central banks of the world just keep printing money.
Yes.
And they're printing it out of thin air.
Yeah.
And the general public doesn't get this either, I don't think.
Well, here's what's interesting. The general public hasn't been spending the money like they were hoping they would. They're trying to get you to spend your money in order to get the economy stimulated. But the average mom and pop and corporation are not spending their money.
The banking system has to have money moving through it for it to survive.
Yep.
Because you mentioned earlier, didn't mention fractional banking, but fractional banking means that if I put $100 in the bank, they can loan 6 times or up to 60 times that amount of money, depending on what size bank they are and how connected they are with the banking system. That's all on paper.
It's all on paper.
The money's not there. I mean, if I put $100 in their bank, or if I put $1 in the bank, they can't loan 60 real dollars because they're not there. So it all has to be on paper in a checking system.
Listen to this. This is the paper of these banks. Take a guess how many paper investments called derivatives are around in the world right now.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Take a guess.
I'd say it's in trillions.
600 trillion is a light estimate.
600 trillion.
Yes.
So it's fake, it's made up, it's IOUs from one person to another person.
Yes.
So if that stops moving,
or if it hiccups,
either way,
you're done.
So,
and by the way, this is what's going on. And so when people say the Shemitah, Charles, hasn't played out, they're completely mistaken. And I wanted to bring that up because please be careful. Look at the maps of the history, because it did play out where you had an initial drop just like we had, and then over 6 to 9 months after the date, it collapsed. And I won't be surprised if by the fall of 2016, this is a very different world. Like I said, China had massive market sell-offs. We have started selling off our markets. We are walking into serious financial problems, automotive industry financial problems, housing industry, and not to even go close to, well, I won't even get into those. We're going to later on. All I'm saying is the data is screaming trouble, and you're only getting a day-by-day puff-up blip to make you fooled enough to feel better.
No,
Don't be fooled.
Wait, though, that's not the only reason. They've got to keep you thinking that everything is fine, or else you're going to take your stuff and put it in your pocket.
Yes.
And if you do, things quit moving through the system, and that's when the system has hiccups and throws up.
Problem, we're almost there. I mean, Glencore going down 80% already in their market share. That company's on the verge of implosion. And if it implodes, everything else attached to that, this is going to get ugly. Now, this is the world, mind you, not just the United States. But why is it important for us? Because we're going to slide into another really bad recession if this continues down the slope that all the data says it's going to. Meaning our assets are going to get wiped. We are going to potentially have massive unemployment again. And I don't know if they're going to be able to save this. All the numbers are wrong. Unemployment numbers are a lie. They're wrong. Get protected, because it is, and I know a lot of folks say, well, it hasn't happened yet and you've been talking about it for a while and I just don't know. What you don't understand is we don't control the timeline, but we're telling you the data is screaming trouble, and one day we wake up, it'll be all over. Russia's invading the Middle East. Wait till we get into this detail a little bit here, and then next week, and you start to see what's happening. This isn't by accident. Get educated, get information, get protected, and be diversified. And here's a good place to get started.
Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked hard to gain. For those who have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, we would like to send you a package of information regarding the changes to the dollar and the challenges of our economy that you need to be prepared for. This package includes how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA for long-term protection of your hard-earned wealth. For those of you with cash to invest, we can arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or simply send it to your home. Call or register now.
So I can't say enough about the whole Shemitah hype. I mean, I'm not an extreme person on one side or the other. I'm just here to present news and information and data that's real and relevant so you can get properly protected in the kingdom. It's so vital that we in the kingdom get what's really going on around us, because it's not just about protection of our assets, it's the protection of the assets for the churches, the ministries, and our ability to feed the poor and help those when this time really gets ugly. So I'm not going to labor into this whole Shemitah anymore. It's in, it started, it happened, it's happening. It was the beginning of, and don't think for a second it's gotten any better. And I shouldn't be laughing, but there's so many hypes on either side of things. And I'm just really saying we're in it right now. And you may not feel like it. Charles has said this so many times. As long as you're eating, going out to dinner, going to the movies, you don't catch it. And I get it. It's busy. I get it. But don't underestimate our world is ready to change. Because we've been talking about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, China, Russia, Iran. Just a few weeks ago, remember, we talked about the Tri-Lateral relationship?
Explain the BRICS one more time to people.
BRICS is the beginning of all of this. We have forced the East into new alliances. People are tired of the United States. We've ran our course. And we only control them by a very narrow thing called SWIFT and financial control. But that's going to end too, I think. BRICS is an organization in a group and cooperative, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And we go look at our series on the BRICS. They have come together, and mind you, the BRICS with the AIIB, which I'm going to get into here, we've talked about 2/3 of the world's population. So this is serious. And their main goal, take out the dollar. Our standard of living, our future way of life, it's not going to zero. It's not going to collapse. But we are going to be marginalized in standard of living like you have never seen. And so if your assets are in the wrong place, you will not have the life you think you're going to have in the future. So it's important to understand what we're saying. For instance, we went into the UN just recently, in September, right after the Shemitah. The UN meeting takes place. Our president speaks to the Russian president. Here's an image. Go to image 1, just so you can visualize this. There they are talking, President Obama and President Putin. And you can take that off. Now, they're talking at the UN. They've talked about a few things, I'm sure. Who knows exactly what they said. But all I know is out of the UN, Obama basically, our president basically said that we're just not interested in Syria and the ISIS fight. We've been doing these sorties and these bombings, but we're not taking it seriously. It's almost as if we're doing it for looks instead of for real. I mean, they've been growing. So ISIS has been growing while we're doing bombings. How embarrassing as a military guy. So that wasn't what the real intention was from our Western position. We basically told Russia, we don't want anything to do with it. Russia says, I'll go in and help out. Russia had a bigger plan than just helping out. They moved in. And what you're seeing in the media right now today, Russia moved heavy artillery, heavy weaponry, heavy aircraft, cruise missiles. Wait till we get in next week on showing all of that detail and how it's playing out. But it's not just Russia, China and Iran too, and it's heating up because it's heating up on your future. So get protected. God bless you, and next week we'll start getting into the meat of this.
Make sure you tell somebody about the broadcast. We're on at this same station, same place, same time every week. My name is Charles Vance for Terry Saka. We'll see you next week right here on The Wealth Transfer.
Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked hard to gain. For those who have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, we would like to send you a package of information regarding the changes to the dollar and the challenges of our economy that you need to be prepared for. This package includes how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA for long-term protection of your hard-earned wealth. For those of you with cash to invest, we can arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or simply send it to your home. Call or register now. Cornerstone Asset Metals has focused on using gold and silver reserves to protect your assets from volatile currencies. Another hard asset that is just as important for your sustainability is food. We believe that preparation is a key to being successful in an unstable economic environment, so we started Cam Ready Food just for you. The Bible tells us that Joseph used the resources of Egypt to prepare for a global famine by storing up food in a time of plenty. His preparation not only preserved the lives of his family, but many others as well. At Cornerstone, we believe the time is now to re-examine this biblical lesson so that you and your family can be prepared for any disaster, job loss, food shortage, or economic instability. You can start preparing today by visiting our website, camreadyfood.com, because food truly is the ultimate currency.